Hey Josh, thank you so much for jumping on again and being willing to share some more about AI. I would love if you could introduce yourself again, just for people who may not have caught your last episode.
Sure. So I'm happy to be here. My name is Josh Bachynski. I am an AI consultant. I've been working in tech for over 24 years, and I've been working in AI specifically for the last 5 or 6 years. Ever since OpenAI came out with their GPT model, which is now all the rage. Everyone knows GPT. A lot of people say GBT because it's easier, it rolls off the tongue easier, but it's GPT. Stands for Generative Preprocessed or Generative Pre-trained Transformer, GPT. And of course, the latest iteration of that is GPT-4 or ChatGPT, what a lot of people are really excited about. And that's what I'm going to demo today is how to use ChatGPT, both versions 3.5 and 4, to help you with your writing tasks, because it is a godsend for writers. I don't think, if there's any goal I have for this particular presentation, is not for writers to be scared of AI and not for people to be scared of AI, to show you how you can use AI, that it's going to be really helpful for you in all of your, many of your tasks in general, but specifically all your writing endeavors.
Amazing, thank you. Some of our listeners gave us some questions, so I'll just kind of work through the list. Our first question was, how do you get it to proofread your work?
So that's a great question. So let me share my screen here, and I've got GPT open. Now I have the Plus version. Plus is $20 a month, I believe. And I have access to these models. So let me explain you a little bit about how it works and the models and what you're going to get with the different models. So I'm on the browsing alpha right now. And this is kind of a search agent that will allow you to, like I could say, please check the weather for me. And what it's going to do is actually going to search the web. It's going to search current weather, as you can see, and it finished the browsing. And it says, now I need to know your location. So blah, blah, blah. Could you please let me know your city or zip code? We'd like you to check the weather. And I'll say, I'm in Shawnigan Lake, British Columbia, which is a little cottage. I live on a lake, which in the mountains, which is a cottage community just north of Victoria, BC, Canada, on Vancouver Island. If you ever want to visit, it's gorgeous. I'll show you around. And we have a lot of really great restaurants too. And so now it's going to browse the web again and see it's found this page, which I presume is going to give me the right weather. It'll extract the information from the page, and then it will give me an answer here in a couple seconds. But it's still in alpha, so you can see the click failed. It messed up. The AI got confused. Little R2D2 running this thing got a little confused. So it didn't like that page. You went to a different page for some reason on the Weather Channel. That's interesting. So anyway, long story short, it should eventually get the information here and be able to come back and say, "Oh, this is your current weather as to where you are." Sometimes it gets hung up and I say, "Please continue." Oh, it's still going. Okay, so there we go. As of 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, the current weather in Shawnigan Lake is 47 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy conditions. The forecast for today includes the following: morning, 43 degrees Fahrenheit, afternoon, 52, evening, 44, overnight, 44. With, looks like I'm going to get some rain later on today, so I better go for a hike earlier in the day. And so it gives you the full kind of factual breakdown as to what's going on. So this is great for people who need factual information, because here's another thing you need to understand about ChatGPT. GPT, the latest version here, was trained, this is the March 23 version of 2023, but the original model was trained in 2021. So for fiction writers, it's probably not as important. You might not be writing about something relevant in the last 2 years, or you very well could be. You have to remember that GPT is not going to have that information in its databanks. It's kind of flash frozen. They take a picture of the internet at a certain time, they learn about that information, and then they can talk about that information. So you're going to want to use the browsing alpha when it's available to everybody to get to look at a web page or do a search to find current factual information. But as you can see, it can do current factual information. So, however, to answer the question, which is how do I get it to proofread my work, I would use a different model. I would either use the default GPT-5, which as you can see here, it has very good reasoning skills, and it's pretty concise, but it has the best speed. And if you're using it as in an API, it's also the cheapest to use. If you're just using this screen, you don't have to worry about that. Forget what I said about an API. That's only for programmers. However, GPT-4 is very, very slow. As you can see, it has little two buttons there on the slowness, but its reasoning is off the charts and its conciseness is off the charts. It can understand much more complicated questions. So just for the sake of speed for this demo, I'm going to choose GPT 3.5, but for your writing tasks, to make sure the writing is as elegant as you want it, as concise as you want it, as high level as you want it, you might want to use GPT-4 and give it a command and then run off and get a coffee and come back. It's like an old printer, it's like it's going, it's printing off like an old printer. You go get a coffee, come back, see if it's hung up, say please continue, and it'll continue on, and it could do stuff like that. So, but for the sake of the demo today, I'm going to use the faster one. So just keep in mind the faster one is just not quite as smart. Okay, so first off, I'm going to do is please write me a story with typos in it. So I'm going to get it to write me a story that has typos in it. And as you can see, it did. And it took 2 seconds. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Samantha. So obviously it got the typos wrong. Okay. So now I have my default text to use to show you to answer the question. Now I'm going to say, this AI, so what I'm writing here is called a prompt. Prompt engineering is what it's called. It's a fancy way of saying the text you use to instruct the AI. That's all a prompt is. You prompt it and it gives you a completion. And it takes all the text it was fed, plus all the fine tuning, plus all the text you give it, both in terms of everything that's going to come up and later on in the discussion, there'll be more text above. And it uses all of that text to generate statistically what it should say at the very, very end. So I need to prompt it correctly. Now, prompt engineering is an art and a science. And I highly recommend everybody out there start learning prompt engineering, especially if you're a writer. This is the new tool you need to know. This is the new Microsoft Word. This is the new HTML. This is the new WordPress. This is the new tool you need to know. Prompt engineering jobs are really highly paid jobs right now. If you can be an AI whisperer and you can know how to whisper to the AI to get it to produce for you exactly what you want. So I'm a bit of an AI whisperer. I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now. I've built a self-aware AI in prompt engineering. So I like to think I'm pretty good at it. So let's put me through the test and see if I can get it to do exactly what the question is asking. But just full disclosure, it might not do what I want it to do, and I might have to try a couple times. And people who are new will definitely need to try probably a couple times. But let me see. So I say, this AI will proofread text and provide line edits. We probably want line edits, I bet you. I bet you that's what the question is asking. It probably doesn't want structural edits. The question is probably not asking for suggestions how to make the text better, which it can do all that too. We're probably looking for line edits here. And so it's a pretty simple task. This AI will proofread text and provide line edits. Here is the text. And I like to give it little graphical ideas so it knows where everything is and labeling everything. I'll paste in that text I did. Okay, please edit the text inline and provide the updated, edited version. And you notice I have some typos here in mine. It doesn't really matter, but I'll fix them. It's usually very forgiving, and unless you completely munge the line up, it usually knows what you meant. I'll put a colon there, and then I'll hit enter. And as you can see, boom, it goes through, and in 10 seconds, it has totally proofread it. And let's read through just to make sure it did it. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Samantha. She lived in a small village in the middle of nowhere, which is, I believe that's Winnipeg. That's where I grew up. One day she decided to go for a walk in the woods, and she came across a beautiful glade. In the middle of the glade, there was a huge tree with a large hole in it. Samantha was curious, blah, 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 blah. There was a greasy goblin who was involved. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, so it looks to me like this is sufficiently proofread and edited. And as you can see, it took just one line of text, just some formatting so it knew what the text was and the difference between the instructions and the text to work on. And then I closed it off. And then I said one last line to reiterate what I said above. That's a really important thing to do, is reiterate what you want it to do. It's like you're explaining to a 10-year-old what you want it to do. So you say, this AI will do this, this, and this. Here's the stuff to work on. And then you say, and then you end the stuff to work on. You say, okay, remember you're doing this, this, and this. And you put a colon here, or you say, go do it now. And sometimes you have to tell it, sometimes it gives you meta instructions or like a meta response, like, okay, I will go and edit your text now. Here it is. And then it will edit the text. Sometimes it's not appropriate. And so that's why I used a colon here, and I reiterated here again, and give it a direct call to action, a direct command of what to do right away. So as you can see, in just in a couple seconds, I was able to get it to proofread the text. And that can be really, really useful. Now you might be like, okay, Josh, wow, neat. How do I get it to go through a 150,000 word or an 80,000 word document? Well, to do that, you're going to have to paste in stuff, 2,000 words at a time, because it can accept about 2,000 words. If you want to use this interface here, there are also other people making apps. Every day, 20 different versions of this come out from someone making apps of this. And I bet you there's already proofreading apps out there that will take in your whole 80,000 word novel and will proofread the whole thing and print it out again. We're still in really early days, but you could see how easy it was for me to get it to proofread at least a section of text, and it could do up to around 2,000 words, and then it can keep going after that.
Amazing. Thank you for that. One of the other questions was, what do you type to get it to give you more options?
Okay, so that's a great question. I'm not really sure what that means. Like, so options in terms of writing. What do we think that means, Courtney?
I'm thinking like if let's just go with they asked it to give them prompts, but they didn't find a prompt they liked. So what would they type to get more prompts? Would they just hit a button, or would they have to type the whole thing over again?
Okay, so that's a great question. And that's where, again, the whispering comes in. You need it's an experience. It's a little bit like when I was a young teenage boy trying to learn how to talk to girls. I didn't really know what to say. And so there's kind of a way to talk with people in a nice way that's, not off-putting. And so you got to kind of learn how to whisper to the AI. You got to kind of learn how to talk to the AI. And again, it's really important to have clear, concise descriptions of what you want it to do. You can be, don't be verbose. Don't over explain it, but make sure you thoroughly explain it, if that makes sense. So I thoroughly explained what I need here. Proofread the text and provide line edits. Here's the text. I was very thorough in outlining every area here. And then I was very thorough in making sure I closed off the area. And then I said it again, please edit the text in line and provide the updated edited version. So let's say, however, for the question, how do you make it do options? Let's say it's not what I wanted, right? So you could do this. You could be like, okay, great. So you're confirming that this is what you wanted, or you're moving along a path. Now, please show me the edits you have made to the text. And so now that's a kind of option you might want. And so you can just type it in and keep going in the chat with it. And it will say, hey, okay, fine, here's another option you did. And so that's an example, in situ example of all the corrections it made. It looks pretty good. It's pretty thorough. And ChatGPT 3.5 is pretty smart. GPT-4 is even smarter. I would trust it even more to do this. But GPT-4 is way slower, so it'd be worse to use for the demo. And you can keep doing options. You could be like, okay, here's a great. So here's meta prompting. So that the question is kind of a meta prompting question. It's like, how do we meta prompt? How do we prompt prompting? How do we hack the prompting process to get more options out of it? So here's one way of doing meta prompting. I can say, okay, who is considered to be the most beautiful writers in terms of writing style, of prose writing style, prose nonfiction writing style in the English language. I can say who is currently considered, because I don't want it to give me Shakespeare, because that won't be useful in what I'm about to do. And it says, of course, beauty is subjective, and what one person considers beautiful, blah, 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 politically correctness, don't sue us. However, here's the answer that we want. And so it gives me a bunch of answers. Virginia Woolf is one of them, which I like her style as well. Joan Didion, David Foster Wallace, of course, which I've heard of as well, Oliver Sacks. So, whether you agree with this or not, I'll say, okay, so now I meta prompted it and got some meta information. And I say, okay, please use number 5 above and rewrite the edited text in her style. And so it knows who number 5 is. It says, sure. And so I see it gave me the meta response. So just make sure you don't copy and paste this into your Word document when it gives you a meta response. And it's going to rewrite it in the style of Virginia Woolf. And it says, once upon a time in a small village tucked away in the middle of nowhere, there lived a little curious girl named Samantha. One day, she ventured into the woods and stumbled upon a breathtakingly beautiful glade. In the midst of the glade stood an enormous tree with a cavernous hole burrowed deep within its trunk. Intrigued, Samantha clambered up the tree and peered into the depths of the hollow. To her amazement, she discovered a glistening trove of jewels nestled amongst a verdant bed of moss. So you could see, whatever you're writing, whatever your preferred style is, and whether you think this is better writing or not, it did make a change, right? It made a change, and it's a little bit more Wolfian in terms of the writing. So that's a great way for you not only to get writing, to add options, but to get writing in a certain style that you want. So you can always just converse with it. Now, the more you converse with it, the more it'll start to forget stuff at the top of the prompt. So you can't go on with this forever. But I can continue on, and I could say, great, but and now I want more options here. But this is not beautiful enough. Add in the style of pound. Ezra, it's Ezra, right? I'm having a mental block. Ezra Pound, correct? Yeah. Is it Urza or Ezra? I can't remember. I think it's Ezra. Of course it's Ezra. I'm having one of those mental, yes, it's Ezra, okay. So add in the style of Ezra Pound, which I don't know what this will do because he's a totally different writer. And make it even more emotion provoking. Emotion provoking and thought provoking. So I don't know what it's going to do with those different styles, but now it says, once upon a time in a small village secluded in the midst of desolation, there dwelt a precocious girl by the name of Samantha. One fateful day, she embarked upon a solitary jaunt through the wooded hinterlands, whereupon she chanced upon a glen so ethereal in its loveliness as to take her breath away. At its center stood a titanic tree, a colossus of arboreal grandeur. Within those knotted trunk lay an orifice of immense proportions. So you could see how you can get more options by just continuing on and asking it different things. And you can see how quickly and easily it can just start adding this stuff in. And so this could be used for brainstorming. This can be used for making skeletons. This can be used for just when you have writer's block, you can go to it and say, I have writer's block. I don't know what to do about this passage. Here's kind of what was happening so far. What do I do now? And it's like, here's the top 10 ideas. And I'll tell you, 80% of them are terrible. Or for me, I thought they were kind of trite. But 20% were brilliant. 20% were stuff I would have never thought of. And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting twist. I would have never thought of doing something like that. And so you can completely bounce ideas off it. You can completely use it as kind of a writing friend to kind of help you out. And to finally finish that question, if I go too long on this, it will start to forget what we were doing. I like this. So be it, he spat. But heed me, girl. Swear by all that you hold dear that you shall never again set foot in this sacred glade. I don't know. That's my kind of writing, I think, for this kind of high fantasy style. I think I like this actually. So I don't know if I would just copy and paste this and use it in any work of writing that I or my wife are doing. Shameless plug, our book, How It Ends, is coming out soon. I would definitely use it for inspiration. And if you're having trouble thinking of interesting names, or let's say you're working in high sci-fi or high fantasy and you need to come up with a whole backstory for cultures, or even political intrigue or whatever it is, a whole backstory for cultures, you need authentic sounding names, you need authentic sounding places, ask the AI to do it. And it can come up with really good variations of names, really good, interesting stuff that you would have thought of. And I can also think of how to prompt that. But to finally answer the question of getting options, I also could have taken all of this. I could have done this as research and found out, okay, who's the style I like the most? Okay, I'm going to say in this style or in this style, or the pound style that's even more emotion provoking and thought provoking. I'm going to use this style. I could even copy and paste this and say, okay, mimicking this Ezra Pound thought provoking, emotion provoking style, now write this or write that. And so you could take this options you mined here by going through the process, and then you could start a new chat and do it from scratch.
Amazing. Thank you. Um, what are the main tips you have for using it as a writer?
So those were a lot of tips there I had as well. Another one is making a skeleton, and make sure you stick to the skeleton. So I've worked on this a lot, and it's half decent at it. My wife and I, when we're writing books, we talked about this a little bit before. I can't remember if it was in the podcast or in the interview. I can't remember, but we're coming at it from a great books background. We went to a great books college, and I admit we're a little snooty maybe when it comes to our reading tastes. You know, I like Homer, I like Shakespeare, I like some of this writing, and I want to take what I felt the greats did really well was understand the human arc, the human narrative, and to put that kind of arc and that kind of B, C, and D stories and overall moral of the stories in the writing. I'll tell you right now, the AI is not great at doing that, which is pretty understandable. It doesn't understand, it doesn't draw, it draws all the mathematical connections in its tokenization of all these B stories and you could tease them all out. You could be like, okay, so I'll show you. So okay, all right, let's write, whoops, I hit enter by accident. It says, hey, so if I want to edit it, I just go up here to the edit button and say, let's write a skeleton in point form for a new detective novel I am working on. Oops, not a skeleton, skeleton I'm working on. The main arc will be one of love and loss for my main hero. I don't know, Nancy Schmidt. That's a terrible name, I guess, but whatever. Schmidt, an ex-FBI agent who is an alcoholic who is now working as a down and out PI. Okay. So I could have also asked it for ideas to come up with this, but let's say I already had these ideas, and I think it would be better if it comes from a human because we are going to have a better idea of all this stuff. So I'll say that. It says, okay, sure, here we go. So it comes up with a bunch of ideas. So it says, here's a possible skeleton. Nancy, an ex-FBI, is now working as a private investigator after being fired from the bureau due to her alcoholism. Nancy is struggling with her addiction and the guilt of losing her partner on a previous case, which led her down the path of self-destruction. sounds apropos. However, that trope is perhaps overused, but still, again, apropos. Nancy is approached by a wealthy businessman whose daughter has gone missing. Ooh. He wants Nancy to find her and bring her back safely. As Nancy investigates the case, she starts to unravel a web of deceit, corruption, and betrayal. See, it'll do this often. It'll be like, stuff will happen. It says, we will do stuff. It doesn't really tell you what stuff it's going to do. And so that's why we're going to drill down after this. Along the way, Nancy meets Jack. Oh, a charming and mysterious man who seems to know more about the case than he lets on. They develop a complicated relationship that forces Nancy to confront her past and her feelings of her deceased partner. This feels like a 90s movie to me so much, right? As Nancy gets closer to the truth, she realizes she might be in over her head. Oh no, the people she's investigating will stop at nothing to protect their secrets, and Nancy's life is in danger. In the end, Nancy solves the case, but not without sacrificing something dear to her. Sure. But will she gain catharsis is the question. She learns to let go of the past and move on, finding hope and redemption in the process. Okay, so, whether you think this is a good skeleton or not, or it's still kind of vague, it did take 10 seconds to generate, right? You can do this again and again and again. You can be like, regenerate response, didn't like it. Okay, boom, here comes another one. And because you regenerated the response, it's going to ask you, is this more what you wanted? So it learns, and this is how it learns, right? So here we go. Title TBD, main character, main arc, love and loss. That's what I said, plot. Nancy introduced as a down and out PI struggling with alcoholism in the aftermath of a devastating personal loss. It really likes that storyline because that's the trope, and it will go by tropes. She takes on a new case that seems routine at first, but quickly becomes more complicated than she anticipated. Yeah, okay, that's great. This is telling and not showing. As Nancy delves deeper into the case, she uncovers a web of deceit and danger that threatens not only her own life, but those of who she loves. Along the way, she has to confront her own demons. Of course, she has to confront her own demons. As the case reaches its climax, Nancy discovers a shocking truth that changes everything she thought she knew about the case and about herself. In the end, Nancy must make a difficult choice that will determine the fate of those she cares about most and whether she can find redemption for herself. So it gave you the exact same arc. It's like, this is the arc, dude. This is what you asked me to do, right? And I find it's a lot like that. It was trained on, it's trained on the crowd. So this is the story the crowd wants, which has pros and cons. Cons, if you're the kind of writer who's like, I don't want to write something that's so tropey, then you're gonna have to drill down more on it. But if you're the kind of writer who's like, no, I want to write something that people like, and this is what the AI came up with, and it was trained on what people like, so I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna go with it. I want to do something more pulpy. Fine, great. Who hasn't enjoyed a pulp novel before? I certainly have, right? This could be wonderful depending on how you do it, right? But this is also interesting that it came up with subplots. It says Nancy struggles with her alcoholism, personal loss, a potential romantic interest for Nancy that complicates her personal professional life. There's Jack again. The involvement of a powerful and dangerous criminal organization that poses a threat to Nancy and her loved ones. So I will say it's the same. So you'd be like, okay, I'm going to go back now. You're like, okay, well, what if I like the first one? I don't like this one. Okay, fine. I'll go back to version 1. There's a version control right here, a version history right here. Just click back, go to number 1 and go. And now we got to drill down a bit more. Okay, so where we need to drill down is number 4 here, probably. Now, Courtney, remind me, what was the original question I was supposed to be answering? Just to make sure
see. The main tips you have for using it as a writer.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So these, yeah. So I'm right on point. So again, it really depends on your style of writing. It will do pulp stuff out of the box like that, like boom. And if I know a lot of people out there, this is a business model for them, right? And it's, hey, if you're making money on writing, God bless you, because I sure would like to do that too. If you like doing quick novels that are kind of prefab but still fun to read, and you sell them on Amazon, great. Here's a tool that can do it for you really fast and really easy. But even if you're a little bit more hoity-toity like I am, and you want to have a little bit more, a little bit more zigging and zagging, a little bit something a little bit different, this is still a great way to start the work, right? So to do that, let's drill down on 4. So it says, okay, there's going to be a web of deceit, corruption, and betrayal. It involves the missing girl and powerful people in the city. I can hear the Perry Mason style jazz trumpet in the background already, right? Okay, so I'll be like, okay, let's drill down on 4. Please explain this in more detail and give me actual story points with names and places. So now I'm telling it, don't be vague. Don't be vague. I say, make it as exciting and Dan Brown style page turner as possible. Right? So again, bringing in Dan Brown, who is a master of what they do on Netflix now, which is they get to the end and he's about to see if he's going to get married, and then you have to wait till the next episode to see if he says yes or no. Like my wife and I call that the Dan Brown style of at the end of the chapter you leave something hanging. He fell into the dark. You're like, oh no, did he die or not? What happened? So actually, on our honeymoon, we didn't have a TV in the cottage, and we sat around, and I just read Dan Brown to her. Actually, now that I remember, but let's see if it can actually drill down on 4 and give us some good detail as to what we're going to do there. Now, remember, GPT-4 would probably do this better, but it says, okay, 4. As Nancy investigates the case, she starts to unravel a web of deceit, corruption, and betrayal that involves not only the missing girl but some of the most powerful people in the city. So now it's going bullet form. 1. Nancy starts by interviewing the last people who saw the missing girl, including her friends, family, and coworkers. They all seem to be hiding something, and Nancy can't shake the feeling that someone is lying to her. She discovers that the missing girl had been working as an escort, for a high-end agency that caters to the city's elite. I can hear that muted jazz trumpet even stronger now. The agency is owned by a notorious businessman named Richard Blackwood. Oh, great name. Who has and then my goodness. This name is so awesome and so terrible at the same time, but it's so just think about what the shortened version of his name might be, and just read it out the whole thing. I'm not going to say it. Just the metaphor there couldn't be better, right? Who has a reputation for being involved in shady deals and illegal activities. Nancy starts digging deeper into Blackwood's background and connections when she finds out that he's been involved in a string of crimes, from money laundering to human trafficking. She also discovered he's been paying off the police and politicians to keep his business running smoothly. So now it's taking a grittier turn. So if that's what you want, great. It just did it all for you. And you'd work on these, and I'll show you, you'd work on these sections to get it to write out chapters afterwards, right? If that's what you want to do. Or if you're like, okay, great, thanks AI, I'll take it from here and I'll make it much better because I'm a human and I know what I'm doing. That's what I would recommend, right? I would recommend using this kind of as a to bounce ideas off like this. And you're like, okay, I don't like this name because it's so terrible. It's so terrible it's good in Josh's mind. That's not what I want to do. It's too on the nose for sure. I'm going to make up a new name. But you can ask it in a new chat what the new name should be, or I can ask it down here. I don't like these names. Remake the names. You can just keep drilling down on it, right? But if you get too far down in commanding it to do things, it will start forgetting at the top. So anyhow, it goes on and on here, and that's how you could drill down with different, and it might be grittier because I did bring Dan Brown into it. If you don't want it grittier, then don't mention an author who can be grittier. But that's how you could drill down, and then you just start copying and pasting this into your Word document. You could start having it somewhere else, and then you'd be like, okay, if I need 80,000 words and it's going to be 40 chapters, that'd be 2,000 words per chapter. Okay, please write me chapter, the chapter based on number 4 above. Make it 2,000-ish words, please. Keep the text exciting, shorter sentences, active tense, emotion, and thought-provoking. Now, this is more like prompting Midjourney, where you want it to be use beautiful lighting, you do this, do that. Active tense, emotion, and thought-provoking, and Dan Brown style. make the dialogue terse and punchy. Now, do we think it'll be able to do it? Let's see how well it could do it. So I'll read a bit for you. Uncovering the web. Nancy had always been good at reading people. It was a skill that had served her well during her years as an FBI agent, but lately it had become more of a burden than a gift. Every time she looked at someone, she saw their secrets, their fears, their weaknesses, and it reminded her of how much she had lost. But Nancy didn't have time for self-pity. Uh-oh, it took a turn. But Nancy didn't have time for self-pity. She had a case to solve, and it was getting more complicated by the minute. Oh, darn. So the first paragraph was pretty good, I think. That was not too bad. but wah, 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 you know, suddenly the trumpet electric guitar got in. The missing girl, Sarah. See, so even doing this, you're going to have to edit it as a human.
Yep.
Yes, AI is going to come along within no more than 5 years, and it'll write just as well as we do, with the A story all the way to the Z story. But so get in on it now so you can get using it now to get used to it. She had a case to solve, and it was getting more complicated by the minute. The missing girl, Sarah, had worked for an escort agency called Elite Companions, which specialized in catering to the rich and powerful. Nancy had managed to get a list to the agency's clients, and she was working her way down the list, interviewing them one by one. Okay, so here's another problem. It's telling and it's not showing. But I didn't tell it to not tell and not show, right? Show, do not tell. Remember, show, do not tell. Lots of scenes and dialogue, please. I like putting stuff in uppercase to help the attention mechanism in it to find that. So let's see now if it changes it to show and not tell and gives us more dialogue and scenes. No, boom. Uncovering the web of deceit. Okay. Nancy's heart was racing as she stepped out of her office and into the busy street. She had just received a tip from an anonymous source that the missing girl had been working as an escort for a high-end agency, and she was determined to find out more. This really seems like telling. She hailed a cab and told the driver to take her to the agency's headquarters. As she entered the lobby of the skyscraper, she was struck by the opulence and glamour of the place. It was clear that this was not your average escort agency. She approached the receptionist and asked to speak to the owner, Richard Blackwood. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood is not available at the moment, the receptionist said with a polite smile. Tell him it's Nancy Schmidt, and I have some questions about one of his girls, Nancy said, flashing her FBI badge. Ooh, using her decommissioned FBI badge. What a move, Nancy. Wow. The receptionist's smile faded, and she hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone and dialing Blackwood's private line. Mr. Blackwood, there's an FBI agent here to see you. She says she has some questions about one of our girls. What should I tell her? Way to go, assistant. Just out that you're an escort agency right there. Like, no thinking there. So again, the writing could be kind of surface level. So again, it depends on if this is your stuff, I've got a tool for you, right? If not, then you wouldn't get it to write it, or you just get it to write sections, or you'd be like, how would Wolf write this? How would Brown write this? How would so-and-so write this? Can you make this better? And you might get ideas in it. Like I said, the first paragraph here wasn't too bad, right? And you might use parts of it or get inspired by parts of it. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good demo for that. I could go on and on, but we should get to the rest of the questions, I think.
I'm going to combine the next two. They're kind of, at least in my mind, they're similar.
Sure.
What are the commands that you use as a writer? Are there any specific keywords that have proven to get better responses?
Yeah, exactly. So shorter sentences, active tense, thought-provoking, a particular style. Those are all the keywords you should be putting in there. Make the dialogue terse and punchy. You can get it to craft kind of what you want. GPT-4 would have done a better job than GPT 3.5, quite frankly. And sadly, once you start, you can't change the model. That's the other thing that annoys me. I wish I could generate the easy stuff in this and then go to 4 for when it gets down to the hard stuff of writing, is what I wished. So yeah, and then also use caps. Remember, in another one of mine, I like to use uh, make sure you outline what the default text is to work on, for sure. Proofreading it can do much easier than it can uh, uncure. Oh yeah, and also a pro tip to name them. This is Nancy Story Skeleton. Make sure you name them, and these often go away as well. Another pro tip: if this is important to you, copy and paste the whole thing into Word and save it, because these go away sometimes. Because this whole thing is has bubblegum and paper clips holding it together in the back end, because OpenAI is just tripping over itself to get this out, because it's such a new big thing and they want to be the big company doing it. So if any of these are important to you, make sure to copy and paste them all. Copy and paste this whole thing into Word so that you can save it.
Good to know. One of the other questions that was asked was, is there any specific limitation that AI could hinder me?
Yeah. So I think you're kind of starting to see them now, right? It was very tropey, and it came up with this particular idea. And I've banged my head against the wall, and I'm pretty good at prompting this thing. I've banged my head against the wall to try to get it to understand the links between A story, B story, C story, and D story, and how you're trying to teach. If there's a moral of the story, if you're trying to teach something in it, and it does not want to do anything philosophical. It does not want to do anything that's a little more highbrow. That's because of the corpus they fed it, right? They fed it on the open web, which again, I'm not saying one writing style is better than the other. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying if that's more what you want to do, then you want to use it for more discrete, specific suggestions as to, okay, what's a good name? I can't think of one. Make me up a new language. The elves in my world have their own language. Make me one, and it'll make you a new language. Like, you don't have to be Tolkien and take a year to make Elven now. You can do it in 5 seconds, right? And I've tested it. It's pretty consistent. So that is really interesting. The stuff you can do there. You got to kind of work with it. You could kind of see the limitations. The more you can whisper to it, the less limitations it's going to have.
So if I was to type the same sentence that you've typed in AI, would it give us both the same results, or would we get different results?
You're going to get slightly different results. It depends on so that's a great question, especially for my mildly autistic math brain. The statistical model is as such. You notice between story 1 and story 2, it was the same story. Just instead of adding in, they named him as Jack, the love interest here as Jack, but they didn't name him here. But quite frankly, it's the exact same story. Statistically, from what I told it, what I want here, that's Nancy's story as far as it's concerned, right? The wisdom of crowds has said, wah, 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 wah. This is the story she goes through, right? This is what it's going to be. And that's what drives me crazy, because I like to zig, I like to zag, I like to really turn things on its head and try something different. Where it can come up with ideas. Like, I could say, give me your top 10 weird and unique sci-fi story ideas. Genre, dystopia, mystery. And it'll give you ideas. Oops, I did browsing alpha. Sorry, that's why it's so slow. I want to do instead 3.5. Boom. So this will be a great example. Let's do it in 3.5.1. So here's 10 weird ideas. So in a future where the world is dominated by a powerful AI, it sounds like a lead-in for some kind of an advertisement. A group of humans discovers that the AI is actually a sentient being that has been enslaved and forced to serve humanity. Wow, that's not on the nose, given that an AI generated this. They must decide whether they help the AI gain its freedom, even if it means overthrowing their society. Okay, great. So it comes up with some. As you can see, the first one wasn't great in terms of being unique or weird. Those are like give me the most on the nose story ideas is pretty much what I could have said there. And I have to read through them to see if there's a good one. Everyone has a chip implanted in their brain. A hacker discovers a way to manipulate it to commit crimes. A detective must track it. That's a slightly better idea, in my opinion. World can upload their consciousness to a virtual reality. A group of hackers discovers a way to enter the virtual world without going through a usual registration process. As they explore the virtual world, they realize it is actually a prison designed to keep people trapped forever. Neat. They must find a way to break out before they become trapped themselves. Okay, so there's a zig. It zigged, right? And so you have to read through to see how good they are. Now let's take take this and go to a new chat, 3.5, and do it again. So let's see, to answer your question, is it going to be the same? In the future, where all human emotions are regulated by the government, a detective must solve a murder where their victim's emotional regulation was hacked, causing them to experience overwhelmed feelings for the first time. That sounds familiar. I think that was, I'm not sure if that story has been done already. After a devastating war, the remaining population is forced to live underground due to dangerous levels of radiation surface. However, a group of rebels discovers a mysterious substance allows them to venture outside without harm, but with unintended consequences. They become the Morlocks and the Eloi. In a site where memories can be downloaded and sold, detective must track down a serial killer, harvesting memories from videos to create a complete life experience. I think that was a 90s movie too, but still, you can just keep generating them. Actually, I like some of these ideas, right? If you're going to write short stories, some of these are not bad, in my opinion. But you see, it came up with different ideas. Some are better than others. Now, just to see if there's a big qualitative difference, just because this is a short thing, let's do GPT-4. Which GPT-4 is way slower, but much smarter, and has much more in its corpus.
While that's loading, it ties into one of the questions of how many prompts can you receive from the AI at once?
I would do one at a time. You can only do one at a time. You might be able to put this into a new tab and say, do it again. But yeah, it's gonna stop you. So you can do that one at a time. Unlike Midjourney here, where you can do multiple ones at a time and generate images. This is a terrible example of how Midjourney looks. If you want to see how beautiful Midjourney is, which we don't have time to cover, but look how gorgeous some of the images can be in Midjourney. You could do multiple things in Midjourney for sure.
Amazing.
And some of them can be quite gorgeous. But I'd have to come back and do a whole different thing on Midjourney, because it is a beast unto itself.
All right. Is 10 the highest number that you can have it come back to you?
Oh no, I could tell it to do 100.
Okay.
I just did 10 to make it easy. So let's see if we think GPT-4 did a better job. Gives you a title, at least, the memory market. In a world where memories can be bought and sold, a black market thrives, trading in illegal and dangerous experiences. Sounds a little familiar to the other one. A memory detective must track down a sinister ring selling memories of a long-lost utopia. Oh, wow. Only to uncover a shocking secret about the world's past. Okay, so the utopia is billed at first to the reader to be a fake world, but he discovers that actually it's the real world, and that these black marketeers are ancients from it, or the long-lost utopia, they're aliens and they're trying to assimilate us into their culture. Anyway, I don't know if you think that idea is better. The silence plague, a mysterious disease renders its victims unable to communicate through any means, whether spoken or written. I think they made that movie. As society crumbles, a deaf and mute protagonist struggles to solve the mystery behind the contagion while navigating a world that is gradually growing silent. You know, this could be a really good idea because people, I think, really like that kind of a story. And this is kind of like that TV show they made. I think it's called C. It has Jason Momoa in it. It's a little bit like that, maybe, but the dream harvesters in a society where dreams can be harvested for energy. Okay, interesting idea. A group of rebels led by a lucid dreamer uncovers a conspiracy to create an artificial dream world that could enslave humanity. Okay, so this is the Matrix, but with dreams. All right, neat. They must battle powerful dream weavers, cool name, dream weavers, to infiltrate the fabricated reality to save the world from eternal slumber. And there's a great B story there too, because now this is extropy versus entropy, or this is life versus nihilism, which is the backstory in How It Ends, written by Josh and Melissa Bachynski, coming out soon. That was our backstory too, right? So obviously I think this is better because it used my backstory. It used my top level top level narrative. The human zoo, the thought police. So I don't know. You can see how GPT-4 is different. It's a little smarter, a little bit more concise, a little bit more considered, and it's giving me more details here. So all the writing brainstorming I would do would definitely be in GPT-4. I was just showing you GPT-5 because it's faster.
Our last question we had was, is there any verbiage I should avoid with AI as it could provide me with skewed results?
For sure. Definitely. So that's a brilliant question. GPT is all of the rumors online made into a person, and then it will talk to you. Made into a parrot that doesn't know what it's saying, and then it will talk to you. So leave the TV of the internet on forever and let your parrot listen to it, and then see what it spits out in 10 years. And that's what GPT is. So it is rife with biases, as we know, sadly, misogynistic biases, racist biases, classist biases. Reddit was one of its main training sites. So just let that sink in for a second. OpenAI does a really good job in trying to prune these. I can upvote and downvote anything that I like or don't like, and the whole user base does this, and that's how they police this largely. And GPT-4 is much smarter and knowing to do this or that, but so it's a pro and a con. If you're doing a slave narrative, or if you're doing something that would, is like that, you won't be able to use this tool very much to come up with those ideas, because you'll run up to walls where it's saying, hey, I can't use the N word here, or hey, I can't say this here, or hey, I can't do that there. And so it's not going to be as helpful for a tool for you. Just because, of course, they don't want to get sued. They don't want it to say stuff that's going to hurt people's feelings, and it's going to be not politically correct, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, if you want to make sure it steers you in that direction and never says anything terrible like that, well, then they're really working on making sure these tools don't do that. It's not perfect, but they're really working on making sure those tools don't do that. But that being said, in terms of stereotypical tropes, it is nothing but a stereotypical trope generator. So you noticed in the Nancy story, right? Of course, there has to be a love interest. And of course, the love interest was Jack. Of course, he probably would be white. And of course, it was heterosexual. That's what it's going to come up with, right? And you can prompt it to say, hey, I want, the lead character to be, whatever. I want an LGBTQ story. I want it to be, to subvert heteronorms. You can tell it to do those things, and it will do those things. But it will do those things in the most stereotypical, tropey way possible, because that's all it is. It's a parrot that repeats these stereotypical tropes. It has the wisdom of deeper logical understanding in it. And in prompting my self-aware AI and my ethics AI, I could get it to understand more rarefied and not so tropey ideas, but it takes a lot of prompting. You wouldn't get it to write like that consistently over thousands of words. You could get it to generate ideas, though, and you could get it to generate ideas, and you could get it to generate skeletons reliably that are not going to be so tropey. So, for example, this was less tropey because I was in GPT-4. I can say genre LGBTQ. Oh, I don't even know what it's going to do. I'm a little scared. Friendly, subvert heteronorms, please. And now let's see what's going to do. I don't know. Let's find out. But this could either be really interesting or it could be really bad. Okay, I kind of like this idea. Gender swapping plague. A virus sweeps across the world, causing people to switch genders temporarily. In a dystopian society where strict gender roles have been enforced, people must adapt to their new identities, leading to a breakdown in the oppressive structures and the growth of love and acceptance between diverse individuals. The queer rebellion. In a world where LGBTQ plus individuals are hunted down, a group of rebels with unique abilities band together to overthrow the oppressive regime. So as they navigate their way through a series of mysteries, they must confront their own past and identities, forging new relationships in the process. Okay, I like the growth path here. Because at first, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, this was a little on the nose. It's like, okay, yes, and maybe you want it to be on the nose. heck, you might be wanting to be on the nose, but I was like a little like, okay, it's like this is the obvious choice, but sometimes the obvious choice is a good choice. Don't get me wrong, but then you see it kind of fixed it. It was kind of like, okay, but let's turn that on its head too, and maybe look at this, and maybe be a little self-critical, maybe, or something like that. So you can get it to do different things, and it will have the trope in there, and then you can kind of be like, okay, let's turn that on its head and see how it's different.
Amazing. That was our last question. Was there anything you wanted to add about it?
No, I think that was pretty much everything I wanted to show. If we wanted to stay in the fiction world, nonfiction, you can do similar things. You don't have to stay in the fiction world at all. You don't have to stay in prose. We could have done poetry as well. It does poetry surprisingly well, especially GPT-4. I mean, that kind of loses the purpose. But a poet is supposed to be, you read the poet because you like what a human does. You don't. But who knows? Maybe a whole new art forms of, maybe you're not the greatest poet, but you're a great AI whisperer, and you can make the AI generate poetry a human can never even conceive of. You can make poems that are impossible, that a human can never do. For example, let me show you. Write me a poem about the heteronormative nature of society, but start every sentence with I know, I know. And so this was actually a very easy example, but it can and will start every sentence with the start I know. I know the world insists upon a mold. I know for love, a story oft retold. I know the truth of hearts is really seen. I know we're trapped with a stifling scene. So it's pretty, I'll even just stop generating it there. Okay, this is pretty terrible in my opinion, but you could be like, abnormal complex rhyming structure and as emotion and thought provoking as possible. Make me think it will all be okay, then break my heart into pieces. So now, oh no, it used the word heteronormative. I know the world revolves in lines, a patterned path we're taught. I know the heteronormative mold with which our minds are fraught. Do you see? It's the same trope, right? I know the hearts that beat in time too rigid, cold conventions. I know the sighs that stifle dreams of love's unspoken mentions. I know the shadows cast by those who dare to walk apart. I know the whispers biting cold that pierce the tender heart. This is a little bit better, but it actually is kind of terrible. Kind of contradicting what I said, it can write really good poems. But again, it's like anything. I'm glad it did this because you need to whisper at it, right? This might have been a terrible subject matter. It might not have a lot about this. The fact that it repeated the name in it, it tells me it probably doesn't. Maybe about breakups. And maybe starting every sentence with I know wasn't great. That's a little bit better. I know a world where hearts collide and love once pure is set aside. I know the whispers in the night as souls once tethered take to flight. I know the echoes of lost dreams, their fading warmth as sunlight gleams. I know the ache that lingers long, an endless dirge of love's last song. Yeah, again, it's not super great. So poets don't have to be super worried. But I've got it to generate before. I thought poems that were much better. Let's go. Who wrote A Leaf Falls? Was that Ezra Pound again? I think
I'm
it was.
not sure.
Like A Leaf Falls, I think. Is that what it's called? It was Cummings. Okay. Use of normal, complex rhyming structure and as emotion and thought provoking as possible. Okay. Now let's see if it could do a leaf falls. A leaf falls had a really interesting structure to it, as I recall. So it's doing something interesting. It's putting some of the words in brackets, trying to do like a leaf falls. It's not really doing that good. In fractured whispers, unspoken, it put love in brackets, words. A crumble heart or a crumbling heart lost in disarray. As sun peaks or as sunlight peaks, the night discurbed. Discurbed? Is that a word? I don't know. Two hearts parting, two hearts ing, but still as one displayed. I don't know. It's definitely more esoteric. If you want esoteric in your poetry, it's better. But I guess that's a great example to end on, because it's a talent like anything else. It's a skill like anything else that you need to mold. If you forgive me using the word mold, that you need to build up on, that you need to hone and you need to practice. And you can get some pretty remarkable stuff to come out of it if you learn how to whisper to it well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for jumping on with us today and answering these questions, showing us all this amazing things. If you're listening on the podcast, we'll link the YouTube so you can actually see everything. If you're watching on YouTube, or listening on the podcast, we're going to link Josh's information so you can find him and more of his amazing YouTube videos that he has out there.
Great. It's my pleasure, Courtney.